uppers. We're talking about speed. We're talking about things that make you excited. Drugs that make you excited. Okay. Uh, maybe. There you go. Oh. In 2008, 5.6 million Americans used cocaine or cocaine products. 1.4 million Americans used methamphetamines for non-medical purposes. 83 million Americans used a tobacco product in 2008. 166 million Americans drank coffee last year, most daily. Americans averaged 56 gallons of soft drinks per person in 2008, most of them caffeinated. That's 598 12-ounce cans or 359 20-ounce bottles of pop. In 2008, 200 million people use betel nut. They brew it and drink it like coffee, or they chew it and it turns their teeth an attractive color of black. In Southeast Asia, especially Thailand, the area is having a severe problem with a form of methamphetamine called yaba. In the area around the Horn of Africa, the majority of the male population and much of the female population chew khat, a mild stimulant, and that's what it looks like. That's khat right there. 1.3 billion people worldwide smoke cigarettes. There are natural stimulants. Cocaine comes from the coca shrub. Nicotine comes from the tobacco plant. Cathinone comes from the khat bush. Ephedrine comes from the ephedra bush. Aracholine comes from betel nuts, and caffeine comes from the coffee plant. Synthesized stimulants, methamphetamines are synthesized. Diet pills, of course, are a form of methamphetamines. Methylphenidate is another methamphetamine. It is also known as Ritalin and methcathinone, which we don't really see in the United States, but is a really serious problem in Eastern Europe. Stimulants increase the activity in the central nervous system. They boost your energy, they raise your heart rate and blood pressure, they increase respiration, they reduce appetite, and they subdue thirst. They may make the user more alert, active, confident, anxious, restless, and aggressive. Stimulants are used to treat narcolepsy, obesity, and ADHD. Stimulants work by affecting four neurotransmitters: epinephrine, which increases your energy; norepinephrine, which increases your confidence, feelings of well-being, and motivation; serotonin, which increases energy; and dopamine, which increases your energy as well. Most of the neurons affected by epinephrine and norepinephrine are located in an area of the midbrain called the locus ceruleus. This portion of the brain networks with many parts of the rest of the brain, and the locus ceruleus is right here, right in the middle. When the body needs an extra jolt of energy, epinephrine and norepinephrine are released to provide the energy. When the individual takes uppers, it forces the release of the energy chemicals. These drugs cause the body to react to stress that doesn't exist and makes the individual talkative, hyperactive, and hypervigilant, kind of like Barney Fife. The stronger the stimulant, the longer it takes the body to recover. Large quantities over long periods of time deplete the body's energy stores and leaves the body without reserves. Withdrawal from stimulants can create severe depression. They can last for days, weeks, or months. People tend to build a fairly rapid tolerance to stimulant, to the stimulant, whatever it is, forcing the individual to consume more and more of the substance. Even coffee will require more and more with increased consumption. The reward reinforcement pathway is a natural structure that informs the individual of an activity or substance that supports survival. Hunger is satiated, thirst is satiated, sexual desire is satiated. When a strong stimulant is used, it overstimulates the reward reinforcement pathway, and the body doesn't respond to hunger, thirst, or sexual activity. The brain cannot be satisfied. And this is a picture of a lady that this is what she looked like before she started using, and that's what she looked like afterwards. As more and more of the stimulant is used, tolerance builds and the rush and stimulation diminishes. But what does remain is the emotional memory of the effect of the stimulant. This is accomplished by the dopamine stimulation in the reward reinforcement pathway. One of the side effects of long-term stimulant usage can be dehydration and malnourishment. The hypothalamus regulates thirst and hunger. Stimulants fool this part of the brain to think that the individual is neither hungry or thirsty. This can lead to deficiencies of vitamins and minerals as well as damage to the teeth. And this is what she looked like in August of 1995. And 7 years later, she had aged quite a bit. Sean Wise was 20 years old. You might remember him from the Mighty Ducks. He was the goalie. He was addicted at age 20. 2 years later, he was sober. Oh, I'm sorry. He was addicted for 20 years. This is what he looked like when he was an actor, a chubby little guy. Started using methamphetamines, and this is what he looked like for 20 years. It looked that bad, and this is what he looked like. This is what he looks like today. He's been sober for 2 years. Sean Wise. Stimulants, including the weaker ones like nicotine and caffeine, induce vascular spasms and constrict blood flow to organs and tissue. Heavy smokers will have a pasty complexion due to the restricted blood flow. This restricted blood flow will slow tissue repair and the healing process. Chronic use of stimulants will weaken blood vessels, increasing the risk of a stroke. But at least the stimulant user has increased confidence and stimulated feelings of euphoria. They are talkative, they're restless, they're irritable, they sometimes will suffer from insomnia, they're paranoid, they're overly aggressive, and sometimes they're violent. Prolonged use of high doses of methamphetamine can lead to a clinical level of paranoia or kick the individual into psychosis. Meth increases the dopamine in the central nervous system. One of the conditions of schizophrenia is an overabundance of dopamine receptor sites. Sometimes the meth user will drift into permanent schizophrenia. I had a student at Fort Belknap that this happened to. Anytime she used methamphetamines, which was her drug of choice, she would drift into a form of schizophrenia. She was she was Ani and Aleut, as interesting as that is. Her parents were one of her parents was from Alaska and the other was from Montana. And when she used methamphetamines, she thought she was Hispanic. And she'd start speaking Spanish, which wasn't real Spanish. It was really kind of interesting. Anyway, so strange situation. Nicotine provides almost immediate tolerance. All stimulants in a slower but similar manner develop tolerance rapidly. Dependence is developed with tolerance since the need becomes greater and greater. Nicotine has the strongest dependence level. Cocaine is synthesized from the coca leaf. Since its introduction in South America with the invasion of the Incas in Peru, it has enjoyed epidemics and lag periods. The first epidemic was at the end of the 19th century. The famous author Robert Louis Stevenson wrote the novel The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in 6 days while taking cocaine as a treatment for tuberculosis. Many have speculated that the two personalities represented in the novel actually represented Stevenson on and off the stimulant. Stevenson may have written the novel to explain to friends his change of personality. Cocaine won't grow just anywhere like marijuana. Cocaine grows. I have marijuana that grows in my fence row. Stuff stinks. It really smells bad. Cocaine grows in the moderately high slopes of the Andes Mountains in Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, Colombia, especially Peru and Colombia. some of the islands of Java in Indonesia. This is the only place that cocaine actually grows. Coca leaves don't contain very much alkaloid cocaine. 1 acre of 6 to 8 foot bushes will only produce 1.5 to 2 kilograms, or 3 to 4.5 pounds. That's 1 acre. That's not very much. Cocaine refinement begins with stage 1, soaking the leaves in alkali and water. Stage 2 of cocaine refinement is where the workers add gasoline, acetone, or kerosene to create a paste. Stage 3 involves discarding the waste leaves and adding an acid, hydrochloric or sulfuric acid. In stage 4, the cocaine paste is mixed with lime and ammonia. The last stage is separating the cocaine hydrochloride from the paste, and it leaves a powder, and that's what it looks like. Smuggling cocaine into the United States has been a constant cat and mouse game between smugglers and the DEA since the 1970s. During the Reagan administration, a friend of the president's was killed by smugglers to steal his yacht, and since then, the military has been used to stop mass shipments coming in by plane and shipped from South America. And so the two U.S. Drug enforcement units have become the United States Air Force and the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard, I guess. And they've been doing a kind of an amazing job. When my wife was stationed at Tinker Air Force Base, there was a task force that came out of Tinker and went down to South America to work in drug interdiction. And I had some students that were part of that. They were Hispanic, but they couldn't just speak Spanish. They needed to be able to speak. They needed to speak the language of Bolivia, Ecuador, Colombia. They needed to speak that dialect of Spanish. It was interesting. I had one student, really good student, master sergeant, whose wife was Bolivian, and he was able to speak the Bolivian dialect. Today, there is only one sure route into the United States, and that is along the porous border with Mexico. Colombian drug cartels smuggle about 2/3 of their product in this manner. The last third continues to come over by sea. North America consumes 40 to 50% of the world's cocaine. Excuse me. It is estimated that Americans spent $36.1 billion on cocaine in 2004. In 2019, the figure was $150 billion. Cocaine in the United States averages 84% purity, with prices ranging from $12,000 to $35,000 per kilogram, about 2.2 pounds. Usually comes in a brick. There are 1,000 kilograms, or 1,000 grams in a kilogram. The street value for 1 gram of cocaine is $50 to $200, with an average purity of about 57%. Crack cocaine comes in rocks from 1/10 of a gram to 1/2 a gram, and sell for $10 to $20 each rock. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're looking at 10 rocks right there. And you'd smoke each one of them separately. Hardcore cocaine users will spend an average of $186 per week on cocaine. Cocaine is actually cheaper than it ever has been. It is estimated that there are probably over 3 million hardcore cocaine users in the United States. The man to the left is pitchman Billy Mays, who OD'd on cocaine at age 51. And he's no longer on television, but he was loud. He was a pitchman, all right. And it was probably had something to do with the cocaine he was snorting. But he doesn't do it anymore. When the Spanish first arrived in South America, they found many people in the Andes Mountains chewing coca leaves. Most Incan users actually mixed the juice with lime from ground shell or ash to accelerate the introduction of the alkaloid into the brain. Introduction occurs in 3 to 5 minutes. These are porters that are walking the Inca Trail, and I was actually at that very spot when I was down in Peru, the Inca Trail. The conquistadores encouraged use of coca to increase the productivity of the Quichua workers. 1859, Albert Newman isolated the active ingredient in coca leaves, cocaine hydrochloride. Isolated the substance was 200 times more powerful by weight than the coca leaf. The drug was first used as an anesthetic and a medicine to treat depression, tuberculosis, gastric disorder, and asthma. Cocaine wine was popular in France and Italy in the late 1860s. This ushered in the first modern cocaine epidemic, as 2 glasses of wine delivered the same amount of cocaine as a line of coke. It took 15 to 30 minutes for the cocaine to take effect after ingesting in this manner. Maltine. By the 1880s, patented medicines and drinks began to appear laced with cocaine, opium, morphine, heroin, cannabis, and alcohol. Since no one really understood addiction or the real power of the supplements in their tonics, many people became addicted, especially women. People began introducing cocaine into their systems in new ways. Injecting intravenously introduces the drug into the system in 30 seconds. Snorting cocaine introduces the substance into the blood in 2 to 5 minutes. Snorting more cocaine is counterproductive, as the drug is a vasoconstrictor. So once introduced into the nasal passage, it slows the absorption of any new cocaine. As the cocaine wears off, the nasal passage opens back up, causing a runny and sniffling nose. Smoking, cocaine-laced cigarettes were introduced in 1914, but the high temperature of the cigarette destroyed most of the psychoactive substance. Because cocaine is a natural substance, it tends to be metabolized very quickly, and its effects dissipate much faster than synthetic stimulants. The half-life of cocaine is 30 to 90 minutes and is detectable in the urine for up to 36 hours after ingestion. Cocaine is used as a topical anesthetic because of its powerful vasoconstriction capabilities. Since cocaine receptors are found in the smooth muscles of the lungs, cocaine use will cause the bronchi to dilate. Synthetic cocaine products mimic the effect of cocaine for eye, dental, and cutaneous surgeries. That comes in the form of lidocaine, procaine, xylocaine, and novocaine, if you've ever had dental work done. Cocaine excites the user by blocking the reuptake of the neurotransmitters acetylcholine, dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. The abundance of these neurotransmitters gives the individual a feeling of well-being, mastery, omnipotence, euphoria, and general excitement. Cocaine metabolizes fairly rapidly, leaving the 4 neurotransmitters vulnerable to reuptake when the cocaine is gone. Cocaine positive effects disappear fairly suddenly after 5 or 10 minutes. This absence of the previous feelings is referred to as the crash and may last for hours, days, or even weeks. Cocaine overstimulates the release of dopamine. If this occurs over time, it triggers the fright center in the brain, causing paranoia. Cocaine also overstimulates the release of epinephrine and norepinephrine. If this occurs over time, the individual may suffer from lethargy, low blood pressure, and anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. Cocaine causes the overstimulation of serotonin, but not only makes the individual happy, but increases sexual activity as well. If this continues to happen over time, the individual may suffer from insomnia, agitation, and severe emotional depression. Cocaine blocks the metabolism of acetylcholine, increasing alertness, memory, and aggression. If overstimulation occurs over time, the person may suffer from tremors, memory lapses, mental confusion, and possibly hallucinations. Some people actually use cocaine as an aphrodisiac, since at low doses it enhances sexual desire and prolongs ejaculation. However, in some cases it causes spontaneous ejaculation. In higher doses and with chronic use, Cocaine may cause erectile dysfunction and a disinterest in its sex. The lack of sexual need may lead to high-risk sexual behavior and unusual sexual practices, since sexual need no longer exists for this individual. For cocaine users who are prone to violence, cocaine makes them more aggressive and violent because inhibitory functions are suppressed in the cingulate gyrus and the temporal lobes. Emotional triggers are overstimulated in the amygdala. The fright center is hyperactivated in the limbic system, making the individual paranoid. When cocaine is combined with alcohol, the result is a substance called cocaethylene, which causes increased agitation, euphoria, and violence. In one study of domestic violence, all the perpetrators had used alcohol on the day of the violence, and 67% had used cocaine with the alcohol. Cocaethylene is also more likely to induce heart conduction anomalies that may lead to a heart attack. This substance has a half-life 3 times that of cocaine and therefore can cause prolonged high blood pressure. While the brain gains feelings of euphoria and well-being from cocaine, the heart is being abused by the substance. Cocaine causes the heart rate to increase and the blood vessels to constrict, raising blood pressure 20 to 30 units. Small muscle repair stops during use. The stress on the heart and the muscle damage being done by its use can cause damage to the heart muscle, coronary arteries, and other blood vessels of the heart. Prolonged high blood pressure weakens blood vessel walls in the brain, leading to stroke. Cocaine also causes a curious condition where calcium and fat deposits collect in blood vessels, causing heart attacks or stroke. Cocaine crosses a placental barrier, meaning that when mom uses, her fetus uses also within seconds. Damage is done to the fetus's blood vessels in similar reaction to that of the mother and may result in miscarriage, stroke, placental separation, and sudden infant death syndrome. This was a really serious problem in the 1980s. I was working in a children's hospital in Omaha, and we had way too many of these cases since we were the children's hospital the only children's hospital from Omaha to Des Moines and from Omaha to up north. So we got everybody from South Dakota, we got everybody from northern Kansas, and we got everybody from western Iowa. It was a mess. And at that time, the wealthy people were using, and there were a lot of trophy wives that very wealthy people were marrying, and they were getting pregnant, and they were using cocaine, and it was a mess. It was a really serious mess. Not nice. And these kids were being born with all kinds of birth defects. It was not pretty. One study looking at 717 babies born to cocaine-using mothers found that they were born on an average 1.2 weeks early, 1.2 pounds lighter, 1 inch shorter, a head that is 3/4 of an inch smaller in circumference. The babies are born agitated, irritable, with high blood pressure. The baby is usually malnourished because that is the lifestyle of the cocaine and amphetamine user. And of course, all of these things would mean that the baby would come into NICU, NICU, as some people say. We never did. It was NICU, neonatal intensive care unit, and that's one of the places where I worked. Escaping from the cocaine-soaked placental environment does not remove the child from danger. Stimulant users are often inattentive and uncaring about the needs of others, and this includes their infant, which results in emotional deprivation for the child, neglect of the child, and bonding problems. Studies show that rates of mental delays are double among stimulant-exposed children. All is not bleak. With concentrated postnatal care, these infants catch up with their peers by toddlerhood. Now, one of the tragedies, these were the wealthy people of Omaha, and there were a bunch of them. That's where the second wealthiest man in the world lives, is in Omaha. Warren Buffett is from Omaha. The guy that owns Godfather's Pizza is in Omaha, lives in Omaha. It was a mess. It was really, really a mess. Tolerance of the euphoric effect begins with the first usage of cocaine. Increased usage has been seen of 25 times the level within days. This is due to the adaptation of the brain to dopamine stimulation in the nucleus accumbens. Tolerance is the euphoric effect only, since paranoia increases, as does cardiovascular effects. Withdrawal from cocaine use is very real, despite the misperceptions of researchers into the 1990s. All the crash symptoms become accentuated and prolonged depending on the dosage used, frequency of use, and length of use. They suffer from anhedonia. They can't feel pleasure. They can't feel pleasure. It's not that they can't do things that are pleasurable. They can't feel it. Lack of energy, emotional depression, loss of motivation, anxiety, vivid and unpleasant dreams, insomnia, increased appetite, psychomotor agitation, intense craving for the drug. And this is what we saw with the mothers coming in as their children, as their infants were in ICU. Cycle of quitting and relapse of stimulants. After a binge session with the drug, the individual crashes, sleeps for a prolonged period, awakens with renewed energy, and swears off the drug forever. The individual feels better for a few days and begins to feel as they did before they began using the drug. 7 to 10 days after quitting, the craving starts to build, energy level drops, emotional depression sets in as they can find no pleasure in their surroundings. After a couple of weeks or a month, they relapse, not being able to deal with the depression or the ever-increasing craving. While cocaine overdoses are common, because of the rapid metabolization, the effects are rarely fatal. In large city emergency rooms in 2004, 41% of the visits were due to cocaine usage, most because the individual felt as if they were dying. The U.S. averages between 2,000 to 3,000 stimulant deaths every year, either from the initial stimulatory stage that causes seizures, hypertension, hyperthermia, stroke, or tachycardia, or later with the depression stage from extreme respiratory depression and coma. Some people will experience inverse tolerance, where they become more sensitive to cocaine's effects. Long-term cocaine or amphetamine usage may lead to tactile hallucinations called formications, the sensation that tiny bugs are crawling on the user's skin. The user will sometimes scratch themselves bloody trying to rid themselves of the imaginary pests. What actually is happening is the hair follicles are standing straight up, as if they were trying to trap warm air. So these people can wander around with hardly any clothes on, even in the coldest temperatures, because their body is insulated by these hairs sticking up. One of the things that people will do because of the formication is they'll shave all their hair off. And that's one of the ways that you can tell that somebody is a cocaine or a methamphetamine user. They'll shave all their hair off. All the hair off their legs. They'll shave their pubic hair. They'll shave their chests. If they're males, they'll shave their heads. And their arms, of course. It's usually the arms and the face. So they'll make themselves bald all over. Cocaine and amphetamine usage may also cause dental problems from the user. This is usually caused from poor nutrition, poor dental hygiene, and the acidic effects of the drug. The individual also tends to suffer dehydration that causes the gums to recede. Seizures are sometimes caused by excessive cocaine or amphetamine usage. 2 to 10% of cocaine users will have seizures, 3 times more women than men because of their smaller size. Cocaine and amphetamine users can sometimes suffer from gastrointestinal problems, gastric ulcers, retroperitoneal fibrosis, visceral infarction, intestinal ischemia, gastrointestinal tract perforation, and colonic ischemia. And these are all problems with their gastrointestinal tract. Another possible side effect of cocaine usage comes from dopamine changes in the cerebellum from cocaine or amphetamine toxicity. The individual suffers from involuntary writhing, flailing, jerking, or sinuous movements of the arms and legs. This is sometimes referred to as meth or crack dancing. And this is a video of someone dancing the crack dance.
What we have is a claim by the plaintiff that the defendant is obligated to her for failure to pay back rentals, utilities, and also for the cost of a, what is this, DNA paternity test that the two of them engaged in. Apparently, the two of them have taken the test and directed that it be furnished to me for my inspection with whomever. Well, in other words, if he's not the father, then she pays. If he is the father, she gets paid.
You'll be paying.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Don't get in here.
That ain't bad.
Don't get in here and show out.
Well, yes,
I'm not going to try it in the court.
Well, just chill just a little
Yes, sir.
bit. Right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Your Honor. Judge Joe Brown.
You know how to act better.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I ain't trying to show out.
Stop. Would you stop?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, I'll try not.
Can you hold still, or are you under the influence?
Under the influence.
Hey,
Under the influence.
not right now.
Under the influence.
But that woman down, she done drove me down influence a lot of things that I said I'd never do.
He gonna lie.
Oh, how can I? When it's the truth. God knows.
Oh, God.
I wouldn't bring him into.
You please.
You know, man, how would you take care of him if officially you're unemployed?
Thank
What's
you.
your
I wasn't employed then.
You were unemployed.
I wasn't unemployed then.
Yes, you were.
But I was selling
No,
dope.
excuse me, Your Honor. He was doing that, but he was receiving his daughter's Social Security checks for her mother's death, and he wasn't giving me none like that.
Everybody
Excuse
knew
me,
I know.
excuse me. Were you let him go?
I'm telling the truth. I'm telling the truth. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Miss Holmes, let him go. I have a purpose. You're showing a classic example. All that kinetic
Okay, I'm
movement
sorry,
from having
Your Honor.
too much energy.
This just,
from
I'm
what
sorry, but it's just hard on me when
still
someone
showing
says
the
something.
residual effects from. So you've already said that you were moving merchandise.
I'm not lying. I'm not denying. I'm here to tell the truth. Now, didn't I say? Didn't I raise my right hand? I don't care who hear the truth. The only one can condemn me is God. But Your Honor,
You may get a little remark. He worketh in mysterious ways.
Don't he? Don't he?
Yes.
He does. He works through you right now. Whatever you decide.
You candidly admitted that you've been moving merchandise.
There we go. Okay, that's enough. You saw him dancing around. That's it. That's the way it looks. Get these guys in the emergency room. They're moving all over the place. Anyway, okay. Polydrug use is very common among cocaine users because the individual may need chemical assistance to come down off their stimulation. The most common drugs used with cocaine are alcohol, heroin, sedative hypnotics, and nicotine. A person who smokes cigarettes is 22 times more likely to use cocaine than a non-smoker. Injecting any drug is dangerous, but injecting street drugs is especially so. The user can never be sure of the purity of the drug. The drug may be contaminated with dangerous substances that are not meant to be introduced into the human body. Bacteria and viruses may be introduced. 50 to 90% of IV drug users are infected with hepatitis C from using contaminated needles. Manufacturers and refiners of cocaine had known that in the pace of freebase state, cocaine could be smoked without destroying the euphoric properties. When freebase is mixed with marijuana and smoked, it is referred to as bazuco, or pasta. This form of ingestion gives the user a more intense and immediate effect than snorting. Crack or freebase has four properties that make it a sought commodity. The melting point is higher, 195 degrees, as compared to the powder, 98 degrees. It reaches the brain faster when smoked. This form is more readily absorbed by the fat cells in the brain, giving it a more intense reaction. Higher doses of cocaine can be ingested in a shorter period of time. Any smoked cocaine product will produce a more intense effect than snorted cocaine. This is true even though most of the cocaine product is lost in the air. 75% is in a pipe and 50% in a cigarette. Hence, more cocaine has to be smoked to get a strong effect. Even when cocaine is smoked or injected, the drug is metabolized rapidly, between 15 and 20 minutes, and must be renewed to get a strong effect. Crack gives a rush that only lasts a few seconds and euphoria and excitation that only lasts a few minutes, 5 to 20 minutes. As soon as the effect dissipates, the individual feels irritable, dysphoric, uneasy, and anxious. For this reason, crack is almost always smoked in a binge pattern. Crack does have some fairly unpleasant side effects: thirst, coughing, tremors, dry skin, slurred speech, blurred vision, crack keratitis, abrasion of the eye, cracked thumb hands, burns on hands and callus on thumb from lighting a crack pipe, and facial burns from lighting the pipe. Psychological side effects of smoking crack: paranoia, craving for the drug, asocial behavior, attention problems, irritability, drug dreams, hyperexcitability, visual and auditory hallucinations, depression, cocaine psychosis, high-risk sexual behavior. Respiratory side effects from smoking crack: chest pains, pneumonia, coughs, cracked lung, decreased ability to diffuse CO2, hemorrhage, respiratory failure, death due to anesthetization of the respiratory center in the medulla. Crack or freebase can be mixed with marijuana to create caviar, champagne, grimmies, fry daddies, coca puff, hubba, and woolies. Users may combine crack with PCP or ketamine to make space basing, whack, or tragic magic. Mixing crack with tar heroin creates speedball, hot rocks, Belushi rocks. When crack is cocaine is mixed with wine, it is called crack coolers. Why Belushi rocks? Because John Belushi didn't commit suicide. He died from speedballing. Cocaine and heroin mixed together. In 2004, 4,500 deaths occurred from the direct and indirect effects of cocaine. Cocaine overdose doesn't always kill, but results in tachycardia and hyperventilation, accompanied by a feeling of impending death. Death usually results from cardiac arrest, seizure, stroke, respiratory failure, and hyperthermia. That means they get too hot. Social consequences: because using crack can lead to risky sexual behavior, children are sometimes produced in circumstances that are not optimum. Crack smokers have social problems and they don't relate to their own offspring any better. Crack smokers show high rates of neglect, abandonment, and the abuse of their children. There are high rates of single and no-parent families. Women willing to trade sex for crack are very common, and then it starts all over again. And of course, this not only happens in the Caucasian community or in the dominant society community, it also happens on the Navajo Nation. It has been known to happen, and one of the areas, Pinyan, was having problems with methamphetamines. And I'm not exactly sure if they've cracked down on what was going on in Pinyan, but there were cases of women selling their infants for crack or methamphetamines, at least methamphetamines. The physical and mental effects of cocaine and amphetamines are similar. Cocaine is about twice as expensive. Cocaine gives a greater rush and more intense high than amphetamines, but amphetamines allow for more prolonged energy. Amphetamines' effects last 6 to 9 times longer. Amphetamines are more likely to cause addiction. Amphetamines are synthetic stimulants that provide similar effects as cocaine, but cheaper and more prolonged. Amphetamines are called uppers, speed, crack, crystal, ice, shabu, and glass. Amphetamines are snorted. Their amphetamines are injected. Amphetamines are ingested orally. Worldwide, 33 million people used amphetamines and methamphetamines in 2003. Speed used to come in several forms: amphetamines, crosstops, white crosses, and cartwheels. Biphetamines, black beauties, dexedrine, dexies, and beans, also called beans, benzedrine, bennies, and methadrine. When my first wife, was working at a truck stop, she was pushing this stuff, and that's one of the reasons why she came back. She was in India. This is not funny. She was in Indiana working at a truck stop and pushing speed as she was a waitress in the restaurant at the truck stop, and she was pushing this stuff, and she got caught, and they were trying to get her to disclose her source. Where was it coming from? And instead, she jumped on a bus and hightailed it. I was stationed in Texas at the time. She had left me, I don't know, about 6 months before. And she came down to Texas because Texas didn't have extradition to Indiana, so they couldn't get a hold of her. They couldn't. It was a mess. It was a mess. So she came in with a whole baggie full of amphetamines. And she had a trash bag full of marijuana. And of course, as soon as I saw it, I threw it away. I didn't need to get in trouble because of her. Oh, she just missed the kids so much. Right. Amphetamines are first synthesized in 1887. It was used by both sides during World War II. It was used as a diet pill in the 1950s and 1960s. The hippies fueled their psychedelic experience with street speed, marijuana, and LSD. Yeah, after I threw away that baggie full of, they were white crosses. After I threw away that baggie, she said, "That's about $2,000 worth of speed. Now I can't go home. I can't go back to Indiana." Now she was in trouble not only with the police but also with her supplier. So she was, yeah. I felt so sorry for her. Okay, what are we doing? The hippies fueled their psychedelic experience with street speed, marijuana, and LSD. This is in the early 1970s, so all of this is taking care of itself by this time. Amphetamines become a Schedule II drug in 1970. Why in the world did they do that? They were trying to crack down on the hippies, who were the anti-war agitators, and they were trying to find a way to arrest them. They couldn't arrest them for they couldn't arrest them for demonstrating because that's illegal. Usually, it's legal. So what they were doing, they were arresting them for amphetamine usage. Street chemists began producing crank, methamphetamine sulfate, and crystal, methamphetamine hydrochloride, in the 1980s and 1990s. These chemists were able to convert the active chemicals in cold medications, phenylpropanolone, ephedrine, and pseudoephedrine into crank and crystal. In the 1990s, a new, stronger methamphetamine began to be produced called ice, glass, batu, or shabu, dextroisomer methamphetamine. This form later came to be known as crystal meth, tina, peanut butter, deadhead, chalk, tweak, yellow rock, glass, rose quartz, speed. This stuff was 10 times stronger than anything that we had seen before. We were starting to see a lot more methamphetamine deaths in the 1990s from overdoses. It was overstimulating the heart, and these people were coming in with heart attacks. They're coming in with strokes. It was strong stuff, and it was killing people. The profile, and I was working in the emergency room. Lucky me in the 1990s, huh? The profile of typical methamphetamine user is white male, 1940. In the West, and especially Hawaii, an equal number of women abuse the drugs as men. Congratulations on equality. Meth is particularly rampant in the gay community, where it is the third most popular drug after alcohol and marijuana. Amphetamines can be cooked in laboratory facilities. Initially, biker gangs cooked the drugs, Hells Angels and the Gypsy Jokers. Recently, Mexican gangs have taken over the manufacture. The DEA estimates that there are over 300 ways to manufacture methamphetamine from pseudoephedrine, and for this reason, cold medicine has been controlled and put behind the counter. Snorting methamphetamine is more toxic to the nasal mucosa than snorting cocaine and may cause irritation and pain. The most intense high comes from injecting amphetamines directly into the bloodstream. Sclerosis and pain often result from the injection. Methamphetamine is extremely bitter and takes much longer to get the effect to the brain. Amphetamines last 4 to 6 hours as compared to 10 to 90 minutes for cocaine. Amphetamines force the increase. Okay, so now I need to tell you about my nephew-in-law. Yes, he was my nephew-in-law. My sister's daughter married a guy that was a meth head, and I knew it from I only met him twice, but he shaved his arms. Now, who shaves their arms unless they're swimmers or bikers? And this guy didn't ride a bicycle, and he certainly didn't swim. But he shaved all the hair off of his body, so it was fairly obvious what was going on. I kept trying to tell my sister that I think there's something going on with this guy. Anyway, when my dad died, no, when my mother died in 2014. They distributed all the money that everybody was theoretically going to inherit, and each of the nieces inherited $20,000. And he had been using meth before, and now all of a sudden he was using cocaine. And the cocaine gave him a heart attack. Died at 39 of a heart attack from using cocaine, stronger than the meth that he was used to using. And so now he's gone. Okay, anyway, there you go. Amphetamines force the increase of the neurotransmitters norepinephrine, epinephrine, and dopamine because it forces the release of these neurotransmitters from terminal vesicles. It reverses the reabsorption pumps, forcing more neurotransmitters into the synapse. Enzymes that metabolize the neurotransmitters are blocked by amphetamines. Prolonged use of amphetamines reduces the body's ability to produce the affected neurotransmitters. Research shows norepinephrine reduction as long as 6 months after drug use has ceased. Research also, now remember, this is what makes you feel like you can conquer the world. This makes you feel good. Norepinephrine, you need that. Amphetamines increase that and tell you that you can conquer the world. But once you stop using amphetamines, your norepinephrine level will not recover for up to 6 months. Research also shows a 24% reduction of dopamine, resulting in difficulty feeling pleasure. Thus, after heavy use, for the individual to feel normal, they have to use the drug. Methamphetamines also causes the degeneration of serotonin-producing cells, this means that you'll never feel normal again. But you felt so good while you were using the amphetamines. It just means that you'll never feel good again. Research of methamphetamine users found that they had an 11.3% reduction in the gray matter of their hippocampus, their cingulate gyrus, their paralimbic cortices. These areas affect your craving, your mood, your emotions, and your memory. And this is what meth head is. However, brains on methamphetamines are actually larger due to the swelling. It makes your brain swell. Amphetamines cause increased energy, increased heart rate, raised blood pressure, body temperature, rapid respiration, higher blood pressure, dilation of bronchial vessels, appetite suppression. Binging on amphetamines can result in not sleeping for 3 to 10 days. Tolerance of amphetamine is fairly rapid and extreme. A normal dosage is 15 to 30 milligrams. Long-term users may use as much as 5,000 milligrams a day. Effects on these individuals: sleep deprivation, heart toxicity, blood vessel toxicity, severe malnutrition. Overdose may result in convulsions, hyperthermia, cardiovascular collapse. I've watched this over and over and over again in the emergency room. We used to call them speed freaks, and we always knew when they were coming in. And you just watch them, and you would stabilize them, and then they would leave, and then you knew they were coming back as soon as they got a hold of some more drugs, and eventually you checked them into the morgue. Unlike most drugs, amphetamines are abused as much or more by women than men. This may lead to use during pregnancy, which results in irritable baby syndrome, intolerance to light and touch, tremors, muscle coordination problems, abnormal reflexes, sucking and swallowing problems, disturbed sleep. Other problems that might occur for a baby born to a methamphetamine user is premature delivery, congenital deformities, clubfoot or limb abnormalities, gastric problems, intestines protruding into the stomach, placental separation and hemorrhage being potentially lethal to both the mother and the baby, intrauterine brain hemorrhage and stroke, HIV, hepatitis B and C. If the baby survives gestation, they may have developmental problems, growth and developmental delays, learning disabilities, increased incidence of ADHD, increased risks of rage disorder, greater incidence of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. I have a great-great-nephew who has rage disorder, and he cannot go to normal school. According to my brother, he is really, really smart. The problem is he just can't control his rage. He was born with a heroin addiction, as cool as that is. Disability rates range from around 33%. Amphetamines produce mild, intense euphoria, alertness, sexual feelings, sense of well-being, and confidence. After prolonged use, irritability, paranoia, anxiety, aggression, mental confusion, poor judgment, impaired memory, and hallucinations. Since amphetamines cause an abundance of neurotransmitters that mimic sexual gratification, using the drug becomes a substitute for sexual activity. Amphetamines will also produce violence in people prone to violence because the drug causes people to be suspicious, paranoid, and overconfident. This proclivity for violence among meth users can lead to child abuse and neglect. In Oregon in 2004, 1,850 meth labs were busted, and a full 80% of the child abuse and neglect cases involved meth users. Excessive amphetamine usage can lead to amphetamine psychosis, just as with cocaine. Hallucinations, loss of contact with reality, speech patterns that are indistinguishable from paranoid schizophrenia. Since these symptoms are caused by excess dopamine released by the drug, psychotic episodes can be induced by fairly low doses in individuals prone to excess dopamine. Some individuals may have immediate psychosis, while others may use for years with no problem. Crystal meth seems to have the strongest effect on the brain chemistry, and since it has fewer cardiovascular effects, can be smoked in larger quantities. The result is more severe paranoia, hallucinations, hypervigilant thinking, suicidal depression, and addictive use. And I think I told you my student, when she had her psychotic episode, thought that her father had murdered her mother. In reality, she was in town to bury her father, and her mother was still alive. But as this Hispanic individual, she thought that her father had murdered her mother. And she went to the police and told them that he had buried her in the backyard of a house. So they went and they dug up the backyard trying to find the body of a fictional mother. And of course, they didn't find it. Eventually, she realized she's not Hispanic, and she was there for the funeral, not for the funeral of her father, not the funeral of her mother. It was just weird. And I told her, you can't do this anymore. The next time you may not come back. 9.4% of children 2 to 17 in the United States have been diagnosed with ADHD in their lifetime. 8.1% of U.S. adults between 18 and 44 have been diagnosed with ADHD. 129 million children worldwide, 7.2%, have been diagnosed with ADHD. In 2016, 6,100,000 children have been diagnosed with ADHD, up from 4,400,000 in 2003. Why are we getting more kids with ADHD? Possibly because of increased drug usage. When women smoke marijuana during pregnancy, we get symptoms that look like ADHD. ADHD is caused by a depletion of dopamine. Amphetamines are used to treat ADHD because they increase dopamine and block its metabolism. Ritalin or methylphenidate, 10 million prescriptions per year. Adderall, also known as D-amphetamine, 7.7 million prescriptions per year. Strattera, atomoxetine, 5.8 million prescriptions per year. And pimeline, Cylert, and of course that's not as commonly used as the other three. Amphetamines work on ADHD about 75% of the time. Usually the other 25% are because they do not really have ADHD, they just have symptoms of ADHD, and the amphetamines aren't going to help. Research shows that children taking amphetamines therapy for ADHD in the long term have an increased risk of alcohol and drug abuse as adults. Half of children with ADHD have comorbid oppositional defiant disorder. If left untreated, these individuals are more likely to progress to more serious problems, stealing, vandalism, and arson. One of the main uses for amphetamines throughout the 20th century was as a diet pill. But every time a new drug hit the market, it seemed to cause its own set of problems. One such problem came with the two amphetamines, phentermine and fenfluramine, marketed as fen-phen. Given in tandem, the drugs caused heart valve damage in select women. In 1999, the drugs were taken off the market. My wife actually used this as a diet supplement and went off of it after a couple of weeks because it made her feel fluttery, is what she said. Stimulants are and have been used all over the world for centuries. Khat is used in the Middle East, betel nut in the Far East, and yohimbe in Africa, ephedra in the Mediterranean area. Khat is a mild stimulant found in the Middle East. Smuggling of this drug in the United States has become more prevalent as more and more immigrants from the area come into the United States. The key stimulant in the leaf is cathinone, which evaporates if the leaf isn't used within 48 hours after harvesting. This substance is said to produce an effect between caffeine and methamphetamine. Methcathinone is a synthetic version of cathinone. This drug is used extensively in the Horn of Africa and on the Arabian Peninsula. In Yemen, half the population uses khat, and a family may spend 1/3 of their income on the drug. This drug is the driving force of the economies of many of the countries in the area. The drug is used socially. Chronic khat use can cause physical exhaustion and suicidal depression when withdrawn. Synthetic cathinone is known as methcathinone. While this is only found sparingly in the United States, it is much more common in Europe and in fact represents 20% of the illicit drug use in the Russian Republic. Methcathinone is much more intense than khat and as addictive as methamphetamines. With this drug, there is more dopamine reduction and so Parkinsonism is more common. Betel nuts come from the betel nut palm and are found all over southern Asia. It is used extensively in India, Pakistan, the Arab world, Taiwan, Malaysia, the Philippines, New Guinea, Polynesia, southern China, Africa. Worldwide, 200 to 450 million people use this substance, and that's what betel nuts look like. In Taiwan, 17% of men and 1% of women use the substance. One recent controversy in Taiwan is the betel nut beauties, who man betel nut kiosks while dressed provocatively to attract male customers. Some of the authorities are demanding more modesty for fear of compromising public morals. This is one of the less provocative pictures that I found of betel nut beauties in Taipei. Taipei is the capital of Taiwan. The active ingredient in betel nuts are ericoline, which induces an increase of epinephrine and norepinephrine in the central nervous system. This causes a mild euphoria, excitation, and a decrease of fatigue. The juice of the nut is dark red and stains the mouth red to black and is very attractive. Ericoline and muscarine are fairly toxic and cause mouth and esophagus irritation that might lead to cancer in the area. 7% of chronic users develop a cancer. In India, betel nuts are mixed with sweetened tobacco to make a product known as gutka. Yohimbine is the extract from the yohimbe tree found in Africa. The tree is a member of the coffee family, and the extract is bitter and spicy and often brewed in a similar manner as coffee. The active ingredient in yohimbine is an alpha-2 adrenergic antagonist that increases the neurotransmitter norepinephrine. Yohimbine has been used for centuries as a mild aphrodisiac and a sexual rejuvenator. Yohimbine's sexual side effects seem to stem from its ability to increase penile blood flow. It has been used to treat erectile dysfunction, as it is reputed to induce sexual arousal in women. The drug does increase blood pressure and heart rate. Male enhancement products include male performance, yohimbe power, manpower, and Aphrodine. It is also found in Sobi Energy. Yohimbine serves as a local anesthetic. In larger doses, it may produce a mild euphoria and sometimes hallucinations. At toxic levels, it can produce paralysis of the respiratory system and death. Ephedra. Oh, I got a story. I got a story about yohimbine. Sobi Energy. It's in Sobi Energy. I had a student that whose husband came back home with a six-pack of Sobi Energy, and she was in class, and she said, "He just came home with that. He's got a six-pack of that stuff. Now I understand what's going on." He had been using it as an aphrodisiac. Not for her, for him. Ephedra is a bush that grows in deserts all over the world. The drug that it produces is ephedrine. This drug is a mild to moderate stimulant that is used medicinally to treat asthma, narcolepsy, allergies, low blood pressure. Ephedrine is also known as Marwith and Mahuang and has been used medicinally by the Chinese for 5,000 years. Ephedrine was first synthesized in 1885 and for decades was the only effective treatment for asthma. Ephedrine's effects are less severe than amphetamines, though a toxic level is more likely to lead to psychosis. Ephedrine and pseudoephedrine are the active ingredients in many cold products. They also make up the molecule that is converted to make methamphetamines and methcathinone. This substance has also been implicated in sports doping scandals and so is banned by the NFL and illegal in Ohio. The sale of cold remedies is now controlled to prevent the hoarding of enough of the substance to convert into the more destructive drugs. Caffeine is the most popular stimulant in the world, mood-altering drug in the world, habit-forming drug in the world. 85% of people in the United States consume substantial amounts of caffeine every day. Caffeine is naturally found in coffee, tea, and chocolate. Caffeine is put in many products to give us energy. It's found in soda pop, energy drinks, and over-the-counter energy supplements. Water is the most widely consumed beverage in the world. Tea is the second most widely consumed beverage. Tea has been consumed in China for 4,700 years. Tea has been ritualized in many cultures like Japan and China. The English discovered tea from Portuguese traders, and the country became obsessed with it. To this day, 4 o'clock is tea time in England, when everyone stops and takes a spot of tea. Coffee was first cultivated in Ethiopia in 650 AD, and from there slowly spread into Europe, though along the way many cultures banned it as an intoxicant. In the United States, each coffee drinker consumes an average of 20 pounds of coffee a year. 8 ounces of brewed coffee will deliver about 135 milligrams of caffeine. 8 ounces of instant coffee will deliver about 95 milligrams of caffeine. 8 ounces of decaf coffee will still deliver about 7 milligrams of caffeine. Archaeological evidence indicates that indigenous people in Central America brewed coca products as early as 2,600 years ago. From the Mayans, this practice spread to the rest of South and Central American power brokers, Aztecs, and Incans. Coca was originally marketed in Europe as an aphrodisiac, but soon became merely candy. Coca has a small amount of caffeine, but other active ingredients in the substance act as stimulants as well, and one of them is theobromine. In the late 19th and early 20th century, manufacturers of cola soft drinks replaced cocaine with caffeine as an energy booster. Some of the caffeine comes from the cola nut from the African cola tree, but most of it today comes from caffeine removed from decaffeinated coffee. Energy drinks began with the invention of Red Bull in 1987. Red Bull delivers 80 milligrams of caffeine in an 8.3 ounce can. Red Bull also contains taurine, ginseng, guarana, glucose, B-complex vitamins, minerals, and carbohydrates. 8 ounces of brewed coffee delivers 130 milligrams of caffeine, and an 8.3 ounce can of Red Bull only delivers 80 milligrams. Sobe Adrenaline Rush also delivers 80 milligrams of caffeine in an 8.3 ounce can. Starbucks 2X Shot delivers a whopping 105 milligrams of caffeine in just a 6.5 ounce can. 12 ounces of Mountain Dew delivers 54 milligrams of caffeine. 12 ounces of Dr. Pepper delivers 41 milligrams of caffeine. 12 ounces of Pepsi Cola delivers 38 milligrams of caffeine. 12 ounces of Coca-Cola delivers 35 milligrams of caffeine. 16 ounces of Rockstar delivers 240 milligrams of caffeine, almost twice as much as 8 ounces of coffee. 16 ounces of Full Throttle delivers 200 milligrams of caffeine. 16 ounces of Monster delivers 160 milligrams of caffeine. 16 ounces of Mountain Dew Kickstart delivers 90 milligrams of caffeine. A new phenomenon that has hit the bar scene is a drink vodka mix with Red Bull, which is known as Birch. It is reputed that this mixture will slow the process of getting drunk and result in less of a hangover the next morning, and that is not really true. Deaths due to overconsumption of Red Bull have led to banning of the drink in several countries. It's illegal in France, Denmark, and Canada. Guarana is a national drink of Brazil. Guarana comes from the guarana shrub, which produces beans that have 2 times the caffeine as coffee beans. The Brazilian drink normally delivers about 30 milligrams of caffeine in a 12-ounce can. Mate is a plant whose leaves are brewed like tea. Mate is the national drink of Argentina and delivers between 35 to 130 milligrams of caffeine per 8-ounce serving. 3% of the world's caffeine comes from mate. Pope Francis drinks mate. Caffeine is a very bitter chemical, alkaloid, in a class of chemicals called xanthines. It is found in more than 60 plants around the world. The half-life of caffeine is 3 to 7 hours. It takes 15 to 35 hours for caffeine to clear the system. Swedes average 425 milligrams of caffeine per day. The English average 445 milligrams of caffeine per day. Americans average 211 milligrams of caffeine a day. 17% is from teas, 16% from soft drinks, 60% is from coffee. About half of all Americans drink 3.3 cups of coffee a day. 20% of U.S. adults consume more than 350 milligrams of caffeine per day. 3% of U.S. adults drink more than 650 milligrams of caffeine per day. 65% of the 450 different soft drinks produced in the United States contain caffeine. Caffeine is used in several prescriptions and over-the-counter medications, bronchodilators, decongestants, diuretics, analgesics, alertness aids, appetite suppressants, menstrual pain controllers. As a vasoconstrictor, it can work on migraine headaches. Caffeine works by inhibiting the effect of adenosine. Adenosine is a neuromodulator that depresses mood, induces sleep, has anticonvulsant properties, causes low blood pressure, slows the heart rate, dilates the blood vessels. Caffeine's effect is controlled by heredity. To those sensitive to caffeine, 350 milligrams per day may cause anxiety, insomnia, gastric irritation, high blood pressure, nervousness, and flushed face. My dad was not sensitive to caffeine. My son is not sensitive to caffeine. I'm not sensitive to caffeine, but I have a mother and a brother. I had a mother, and I do have a brother, who are so sensitive to caffeine that they couldn't drink it. My mother gave her heart palpitations, and my brother becomes kind of psychotic when he drinks caffeine, so he doesn't drink it at all. One study where subjects were, and I'm drinking it right now in Code Red. Zero sugar Code Red. One study where subjects were given 500 milligrams of caffeine showed a 32% elevation of the stress hormones for an extended period of time. Caffeine is lethal at 10 grams. That's 100 cups of coffee or 185 cans of Mountain Dew. In susceptible people, too much caffeine can trigger nervousness. Caffeine is one of the substances that people prone to panic attacks should avoid. Counselors should ask their clients about their caffeine consumption, as sensitivity in excess amounts might create artificial anxiety. Excess caffeine consumption can lower the fertility in women. 350 milligrams per day will not only make it less likely that a woman will get pregnant, but will double the chance of a miscarriage. Excessive caffeine consumption has also been implicated in a woman's developing benign lumps in her breasts. Researchers also feel that caffeine may make it difficult to lose weight because caffeine triggers the release of insulin, which metabolizes sugar and in turn creates a deficit in the blood, which causes hunger. Since there are a number of different hereditary structures that dictate sensitivity and tolerance to caffeine, talking about amounts and effects varies from one individual to another. High caffeine consumers may actually get sleepy when only consuming small amounts of the substance because it activates the adenosine receptor sites. Withdrawal symptoms from caffeine begins after 12 to 24 hours of abstinence and peak after 24 to 48 hours. The symptoms can last from 2 days to a week. Throbbing headaches, sleepiness, fatigue, lethargy, depression, decreased alertness, sleep problems, irritability, flu-like symptoms, nausea, vomiting, muscle pains, or stiffness. Nicotine comes from the leaves of the tobacco plant. The tobacco plant is a member of the nightshade family, which also includes tomatoes, belladonna, henbane, and petunias. In the United States, 90% of the tobacco is delivered to its users as cigarettes. In India, 85% of all men use tobacco in the form of chewing tobacco. Isn't that odd? Tobacco came to the Old World from the Americas, and it originally was smoked in pipes. In the 18th century, people began chewing the leaves and snorting the powder into their noses as snuff. Smokeless tobacco continued to be the most popular use of tobacco until World War I. Around World War I, packaged cigarettes became popular in the trenches of Europe. This was possible because cigarette rolling machines improved, Cigarettes used a milder form of tobacco, which allowed deeper inhalation of the tobacco. Mass production produced lower prices. Advertising popularized the product. More aggressive marketing brought the product around the world. Heavy smokers in the United States will smoke 20 to 40 cigarettes per day. U.S. tobacco users spend $89 billion a year on tobacco products. 24.9% of the population over 12, 60.5 million Americans, smoked cigarettes in the past month. 51 million Americans smoke cigarettes every day. 13.6 million Americans smoke cigars every day. 2.2 million Americans smoke tobacco in pipes every day. And 7.7 million Americans use smokeless tobacco every day. Smokeless tobacco comes in three forms: moist snuff, that is put in the mouth next to the gums; powdered or dry snuff, which is drawn up the nose; and loose leaf chew, which is put in the mouth and chewed. And this is a form of this is known as snus up in North Dakota, Montana, South Dakota area. It's a Scandinavian thing. The active ingredient in tobacco is nicotine. Nicotine is highly poisonous alkaloid that is bitter, smelly, and colorless. Tobacco leaves hold 2 to 5% nicotine. Smoking tobacco delivers nicotine to the brain in 5 to 8 seconds. Smokeless tobacco delivers nicotine to the brain in 3 to 8 minutes. Cigarettes contain 10 milligrams of nicotine, but a typical smoker will only get 1 to 3 milligrams in their system with one cigarette. 70 milligrams of nicotine is fatal, so you can actually poison people to death poison them to death with nicotine. Chewing tobacco will deliver 4.5 milligrams of nicotine to the brain, while snuff will deliver 3.5 milligrams. The first cigarette of the day will raise the heart rate by 10 to 20 beats and the blood pressure by 5 to 10 units. Nicotine affects the central nervous system and disrupts the following neurotransmitters: endorphins, epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, and acetylcholine. Nicotine mimics acetylcholine, filling nicotinic acetylcholine receptor sites, exaggerating the cholinergic effects, increasing heart rate, blood pressure, memory, learning, reflexes, aggression, sleep, sexual activity, and mental acuity. Dopamine makes a smoker feel satisfied and calm. Thus, a cigarette both excites and tranquilizes at the same time. People continue to take in the tobacco toxins because it is a social ritual. There's also a ritual aspect to the lighting up and smoking. Smoking is perceived as an adult activity. It manipulates your mood. It increases your dopamine. It appears to be rebellious. It is sexually attractive. Well, maybe not now. Controls appetite, leading to weight loss. Nicotine is craved. Nicotine suppresses the appetite and increases metabolism. The average smoker weighs 6 to 9 pounds lighter than a same-sized non-smoker. It may be the fear of putting on weight that keeps some smokers from stopping. Smokers may also be self-medicating to combat depression. Smokers are twice as likely as non-smokers to experience major depression. Smokers who have experienced at least one major episode of depression are less likely to succeed in smoking cessation. Nicotine creates an intense craving when a select level is not maintained in the bloodstream and the brain. The mere act of lighting up activates the nucleus accumbens, giving the smoker a sense of reward. The rush is similar to the feeling that a heroin user gets when they relapse after an abstinent period. This use to escape withdrawal symptoms is called negative drug reinforcement. Only a few hours of smoking leads to neural adaptation to the toxicity of the nicotine. The first morning hit after a long night's sleep is said to feel especially rush-like as the individual builds the nicotine level back to their daytime norm. Unlike other drugs, nicotine does not continue to build up a tolerance, but the smoker finds a level of comfort that they attempt to maintain. Withdrawal from nicotine causes headaches, nervousness, fatigue, hunger, severe irritability, poor concentration, depression, increased appetite, sleep disturbances, intense nicotine craving. The individual has experienced a true psychological dependence as the individual has created an excess number of nicotinic acetylcholine receptors that are screaming to be occupied. Without the nicotine to occupy these sites, the result is irritability and discontent. The smoker needs the tobacco to feel normal. Researchers now realize that the feelings of relaxation and well-being that smokers feel when they light up is actually the feeling of having the withdrawal symptoms subdued. Nicotine addiction is a more powerful addiction than any other. While 23 million people have tried cocaine, only 600,000 people are weekly users and a rare few on a daily basis. 72 million people have tried marijuana, but only 6.8 million use on a weekly basis and only a fraction on a daily basis. 198 million people have tried alcohol, but only 48 million use it weekly and only 20 million on a daily basis. 162 million people have tried tobacco, 60 million smoke weekly, and 37 million smoke daily. Nearly 1/4 of the people who try tobacco continue to use the drug daily, as compared to the fractions with other drugs and 10% of people using alcohol. 80% of smokers say they want to quit. 10% want to limit the amount that they smoke. Only 10% of smokers want to continue, yet 100% do continue to smoke or chew. Other countries have more serious problems with tobacco than the United States. China's use is 50% higher. England's use is 40% higher. Japan's use is 50% higher. Globally, 12% of women and 47% of men smoke. There may be a predilection to use tobacco. The DRD2A1 allele is seen as the culprit. A teen who smokes is 3 times more likely to abuse alcohol, 8 times more likely to abuse marijuana, 22 times more likely to abuse cocaine. Only 8% of black teens use tobacco, 15.7% of Hispanic teens use tobacco, 25.7% of white teens use tobacco. Nicotine contains from 4,000 to 48,000 chemicals. 400 are toxins, 69 are known cancer-causing substances. Worldwide, it is estimated that smoking causes 5 million premature deaths per year. 392,000 of these people are in the United States, 264,000 men, and 178,000 women. Lung cancer, heart disease, and lung disease are the killers. An additional 50,000 people die from secondhand smoke. 8.6 million Americans have at least one serious illness caused by smoking. It is estimated that a smoker loses 10 years off their life. Smoking accelerates the process of atherosclerosis by increasing low-density fats, by increasing blood coagulability, triggering cardiac arrhythmias, reducing microrespiratory function by introducing carbon monoxide into the bloodstream 230 times. Carbon monoxide has a 230 times greater affinity for hemoglobin than oxygen. Being a vasoconstrictor, it is a vasoconstrictor. 1/3 of all smoking deaths are due to cardiovascular disease. 35,000 of these are from secondhand smoke. Bronchopulmonary diseases are far more prevalent among smokers than non-smokers. Emphysema, chronic bronchitis, and COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Children who live with smokers suffer from more asthma, colds, and bronchitis. 80 to 90% of all COPD deaths are due to smoking. Men who smoke are 22 times more likely to develop lung cancer than men who don't. Women who smoke are 12 times more likely to develop lung cancer than women who don't. 85% of men and 75% of women with lung cancer smoke. And I'm not going to read the next one. The women are catching up with men. About 15% of mothers smoke during pregnancy. Nicotine and the byproducts carbon monoxide change some of the positive properties in the blood. Carbon monoxide blocks oxygen transport. Nicotine makes platelets more sticky, increasing the possibility of a clot forming. Babies born to smokers have lower birth weight. They have a higher incidence of sudden infant death syndrome. Women who smoke during pregnancy are twice as likely to miscarry and have spontaneous abortions as non-smokers. Children whose mothers smoked during pregnancy have a 4 times greater chance of having ADHD, conduct disorder, drug dependence, asthma, chronic bronchitis, chronic respiratory symptoms. All of these are more prevalent in children whose mothers smoked during pregnancy. Smokeless tobacco can be addicting as smoking because tobacco is smokeless, and smokeless tobacco forms contain more nicotine than smoked tobacco. People use more smokeless tobacco when they use. Smokeless tobacco has a higher pH, allowing it to pass into the capillaries more readily. One dip of smokeless tobacco delivers the same amount of nicotine as 3 to 4 cigarettes. At least the dipper is less likely to get lung cancer. Gums are inflamed from use, causing more dental problems, higher risk of oral cancer, pharyngeal cancer, esophageal cancer, cheek cancer, and gum cancer. How do they do it? Why they use golly. I can't think of it. It's a substance that cuts to the gums and gets the nicotine in the system faster. A famous singer of the 50s, Nat King Cole, was one of the first African American TV stars. A heavy smoker, Nat King Cole died of lung cancer at age 45. A leading man of the 60s and 70s, Steve McQueen starred in such movies as The Great Escape and The Sand Pebbles. He was a heavy smoker all his life. McQueen died of lung cancer at age 50. One of the blonde bombshells of the 40s and 50s, Betty Grable, was a famous pinup for World War II soldiers because they liked her sexy legs. A smoker to keep her figure, Gable died of lung cancer at age 56. Known for his raspy voice and tough guy image, Humphrey Bogart starred in films in the 40s and 50s in such films as Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon. His heavy smoking caught up with him in 1956 when he died of lung cancer at age 57. Known as the youngest Beatle, Harrison was first to die naturally at 58 from lung cancer. John Lennon was murdered in 1980. Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney are still alive. Harrison was a smoker and a toker. He smoked marijuana most of his life and died at age 58. Benefits of quitting using tobacco: 20 minutes after quitting, blood pressure and pulse rate will drop, and the feet and hands warm to normal temperatures. Within 8 hours, the carbon monoxide level in the blood drops and oxygen levels increase, both to normal. Within 24 hours, the risk of sudden heart attack decreases. Within 48 hours, the nerve endings adjust to the absence of nicotine, while the sense of taste and smell return. It only takes 2 days. Within 1 week, breathing improves and constricted blood vessels begin to relax. Within 2 to 12 weeks, circulation improves, lung function increases up to 30%, and the complexion begins looking healthy again. Within 1 to 9 months, fatigue, coughing, sinus congestion, and shortness of breath decreases, and lungs increase their ability to handle mucus. Within 1 year, the risk of coronary heart disease has been cut in half. Within 5 years, the heart disease rate has become that of a non-smoker. Within 10 years, the lung cancer rate drops to just above that of a non-smoker. Within 10 to 15 years, the decrease rate has returned to that of a non-smoker. And that is it. And I will talk to you again next week, maybe.